So, could you please state your name and the branch of service?
My name is Michael Currie, United States Navy veteran.
What was your rank?
E3 Seaman, first class.
I don't think we've had that yet, have we? No? All right. And where did you serve?
I served in several places in the States. In Treasure Island, San Francisco is a naval base. Coronado, California is an amphibious naval base. Also Port Hueneme, CB base. And then I spent the rest of my active duty time in Vietnam, in country.
Why did you decide to join the military?
Well, my family has a long history of military service. I have a great-great-grandfather who served in the Civil War. My dad and 6 of his brothers all served in World War II at the same time. My brother was in the Marine Corps. In fact, he was in the Marine Corps before I joined the Navy. So I thought it was the right thing to do. At one time, I decided that I was going to go to school at the university, but I didn't have the funds to do it at the time. So I thought if I went into the service, and I talked to my father about that, and I talked to some other friends, and I felt that the Navy and the Air Force would give me the better opportunity for an education. So that's why I joined the service and I joined the Navy.
All right. Do you recall what your first days in service felt like? So this is really more of boot camp.
Yes, of course. Everybody goes to boot camp, right? But yeah, I think the first day, I hadn't been away from home very much when I was younger, and so I was like everybody else in boot camp, and it was very strange. The first thing you do is you go through, your haircuts and your shots and things. But that first night that we were all together in the barrack, it was everybody was lonely. I was kind of homesick, but there were a number of guys and it really surprised me. There were a number of guys that laid in their bunk and literally cried. And
this was on the first night?
That was the first night. Obviously, things got better, but that was my first experience in the service, was just that first night in boot camp. And then, of course, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going to chow, and going through all the drills, and also the one thing I always remember, and I think it was kind of funny, was that we had to salute everything in boot camp. All the trucks, garbage trucks, civilians, for whatever reason, we had to salute everybody. And I always thought that was kind of strange, but of course, I did that. Those are the first memories I've had in military service.
Interesting. What is one thing you'll never forget about boot camp?
Cleaning the restroom and cleaning them with the special tools. We also had a initiation of several guys with socks, and I just don't really want to go into that, but that's pretty much.
Yeah. Was there any more positive memories that you remember?
Just the friendships. I mean, I still have the photograph of the company I was in. I do communicate with a few of the guys that were from the Madison area. But yeah, I think just the friendships, and a lot of the guys that I went through boot camp with, I went through a lot of other training with, and 3 or 4 of them ended up in Vietnam, where I was stationed as well.
Right.
So
I don't think I've asked you yet. What were your years of service?
From 1968, January of 1968, through 72.
What was your favorite food from the mess hall?
Shit on the shingles.
What is that? You're good. No, you can say that. What is that?
That's chip beef on toast. Cream chip beef on toast. It's a flour and butter and milk mixture with a cream, like a cream sauce, and then you take chip beef, or some people use hamburger, and you throw it over toast.
Huh.
And I would eat that 3 times a day if I could at that time.
Yeah.
I still do.
Yeah?
I still make it maybe once or twice a month just for breakfast.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. They did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've had that answer yet. Okay. Where did you serve? And so you're deployed really in Vietnam. So did
Yeah.
you serve anywhere else overseas?
No, just Vietnam.
Okay. Do you remember what it was like arriving?
Yeah. We flew over on a commercial flight and landed in Da Nang. And the very first thing I remember is when I walked off the plane, it was kind of like a wall of heat just hit you in the face. And you took a big gasp of air, but there really wasn't any air to gasp. It was so humid. But that was my first experience, as I got off the plane.
Mm-hmm. What was your job assignment while you're in Vietnam?
My job assignment when I got there was orders were stamped across the top, combat essential, and I was shipped up to Chiang Mai, which was north of Da Nang, Vietnam, on the Perfume River. And I was on small boats running security up and down the river from Chiang Mai to the city of Hue. And we were there to check small Vietnamese boats for contraband, because there were Vietnam sympathizers in Viet Cong that were always trying to run contraband one place to the other on the rivers. So that's what we did, is we would check those sampans.
Okay. Can you tell me about a couple of your memorable experiences?
Well, I suppose there's a couple good ones, maybe a couple bad ones, but I guess the first one was stateside, and I was going through a bunch of training for Vietnam. And my brother was in the Marine Corps, and he was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and I hadn't seen him in quite a long time. And I was given orders to go to Camp Pendleton for weapons training. So while I was there, I checked with a few people that I knew, and they got in contact with my brother, and we were able to meet while we were at Camp Pendleton together and make a surprise phone call to my mom on Mother's Day. So that was a really good one. Some of the memories that I have from Vietnam, there's some good ones, there's some bad ones. I remember the first night in Chiang Mai, I had to do post perimeter duty, and the lieutenant took me out to the perimeter and to the bunker, and he was giving me certain orders in certain direction, and then he asked me, "What do you hear?" And I didn't quite understand what he meant. I just kind of looked at him, I think probably with a blank look, and said, I don't know what you mean. He said, "Tell me what you're hearing right now." And I was kind of a smart ass at the time. I said, "Well, I guess I'm listening to you talk to me." And he just shook his head and he said, "I'm going to ask you one more time. What can you hear right now?" I said, "I guess I hear cricket." He said, "When those crickets stop, you'll probably die. Because when those crickets stop, that means the sappers have gotten through the perimeter." Unfortunately for me, that didn't happen that night, but about a half a click down, there was another security bunker on the perimeter, and that person did not make it because the sappers got in that night and blew up part of the fuel depot that we had there. But that was a very strong memory that I have of my tour there. And then, of course, the other memory I have is my first combat situation, where we were going up the river and we were checking sampans, and all of a sudden we were getting sniper fire and fire from the shore. And I don't like saying this, but the first thing I did, because it was my first combat situation, I was very scared. I was behind the 60 machine gun, and I just dropped down to the deck and picked up my M16 and just kind of reached over the side, just was shooting at nothing, as the chief petty officer was yelling at me to get my ass back up behind the 60. So that was a very strong memory. I mean, I'll remember that as long as I live, because it was the first time that I realized I could die. When you grow up, you think, playing Army all the time, but it doesn't become real until you're in those positions. And so that was a very strong memory for me.
Wow, that is a incredible story. I haven't heard the phrase sapper. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Those were Vietnamese, Viet Cong, who would basically sneak in. They would, in our area, because we had a lagoon area there where we kept the boats, they would swim in or sneak in and blow up the perimeter areas or sneak through the perimeter and blow up the fuel depot or, do whatever damage they could. And we did have a lot of patrols at night along the river and in the lagoon that would literally throw concussion grenades into the water if there happened to be sappers coming in. These concussion grenades would paralyze them or concuss them at a certain range, but within a short range would kill them. So,
how big was the base that you're on? How many people?
It wasn't very big. It was, like I said, it was in a lagoon. We had small boats, mike boats there, and the 101st Airborne had a small detachment. They were Army. They were a small detachment. It was more of a fuel depot and a drop-off. And in the lagoon itself, we had Mobile Base 1, which was a PBR base, patrol river boats.
Okay.
And they did most of the patrolling. And the other small boats did it as well. We were all part of Task Force Clearwater, which ran from Tan Mai up to Qua Viet, so it went beyond Hue. And between Tan Mai and Hue was about a 12-mile stretch. And in between there was Phu Bai, which was a Marine base.
Do you have any questions? He sometimes, I think, has good questions and he doesn't share them. When your service ended, what did you do in the days and weeks afterward?
Well, when I got home, I reported to the Reserve Center because that's what I was supposed to do. And then I lived with my parents for a while. Of course, I looked for a job, and I looked into going back to school. And I was interested in commercial art, graphic arts, and I went to MATC, Madison Area Technical College, and talked to the art director there. And because I had no portfolio to show, and I had just come back from Vietnam, and having him interview me, he thought maybe I should probably wait a year, kind of think about things, and then come back and speak with him. So what I ended up doing is just working construction and driving truck for that year or so, and I put a portfolio together, still living with my parents, and and finally I got into school in 1971 and graduated in 73 with a commercial art and graphic arts degree.
Wow, cool. So what did you do for your profession then after that?
From there, I got a job working at Mercury Marine in Fond du Lac in their graphics department, doing their engine manuals.
Okay.
And then from there, I got a job as art director for Shumway Advertising Agency in Madison. And I worked there for a couple years, and I got to a point where it was a pretty stressful job. I mean, I was constantly having to be in the office or having to be with a client and couldn't spend any time doing anything else. So I left there, and I went to work for the state of Wisconsin. And I finished, after 32 years, I retired in 2011.
What did you do for the state?
I was Director of Operations for Department of Corrections and Badger State Industries, which was industries programs or the prisons have to have a prison industry in each one of the prisons in the state of Wisconsin. So it could be printing or furniture or graphics. I was the director of that operation.
Oh, that is quite a switch from an art director to that.
It was.
Yeah.
I just completely gave it up.
Okay.
I still look at my portfolio down in the basement every once in a while. But,
I bet.
Yeah, I just thought it was too much for me.
Yeah.
I guess
I can't imagine you can be very creative in that kind of position anyways. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. I love art, so I'm like, oh, tell me everything.
Yeah. So does my wife, and she constantly is trying to get me to, get back and maybe do some watercolor or
I
some
was going
pen
to
and
ask
ink
what your medium
illustration
is.
or whatever, but I just haven't had the
Yeah.
urge to do it.
So is watercolor your favorite medium?
I did do a lot of watercolor and a lot of pen and ink illustration and some airbrush. But
Wow. All right. I'm going to follow up with you on that. Okay. So what were some things that you were looking forward to when you came home?
Well, I was looking forward to all the good food that you don't get when you're in the service and when you're in Vietnam. But I was looking forward to spending time with some friends and family, and just getting back to um, feeling comfortable, not not being afraid. Um, just you just lived every day, and I'm sure there's a lot of other veterans who spoke to that have had combat experience. It's an experience that it's hard to explain. Um, Not every day was a bad day, but there were days that you were thinking, well, will I get home? But when I got home, that was the important thing, was that I was able to spend time with my family and my friends and do the things I was doing before I went into the service and went into Vietnam.
How old were you when you went into the service?
I entered the service at 19,
Okay.
and I was 21 in Vietnam. That was a good memory too. I had my 21st birthday in Vietnam, and the guys really threw me a pretty fun party. It was obviously beer and whatever food we'd get our hands on, sea rats, and they kept. At the time I was in Da Nang, and they kept throwing me off the dock. The dock was about 12, 15 feet above the water line, and then I'd have to climb back up, and then they'd throw me back in, climb back up, throw me back in, and of course the water around that dock area was kind of, had a film of oil because of all the boats. Yeah, that was a fun memory.
Hmm. Was there anything that you were hesitant about coming home?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Was there anything that helped your transition a little bit?
My family, my family was very supportive, and I think that had to do with my dad and my uncles, who all had been in World War II and had been in combat. So that helped a lot. There were some friends that didn't understand, and as you know, most Vietnam veterans didn't get a good welcome home. I didn't have that, um, not being welcome home, but I did feel that wasn't appreciated very much, and it took a long time for me. When I got home, I didn't think about Vietnam. I mean, I would have some dreams now and again, but nothing real serious. But I didn't think about it on a daily basis. I let it go because it wasn't important to me at the time. I went and I did my service, and I was proud of that. But I don't think anybody else was proud of the fact, other than my family, that I was there and other Vietnam veterans were there. So I let it go for a long time, very long time. And quite frankly, I think my kids, when they were younger, they had gone through some history classes in school, and then they would come home and ask me, and that kind of got me back thinking about Vietnam and thinking about, what I did and how proud I was of what I did. And so that led to a number of other things. It led to me joining VFW. It led me join the American Legion, volunteering and really wanting to be a part of what's going on within the veteran community.
Mm-hmm.
So
You're doing great. All right. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the general military?
well, like I said, I was just saying, when I came home, I didn't think about it. Um, I had a hard time watching the protests on State Street and at the university at the time. Um, and I guess I used to say to a lot of people when they asked me, you know, before we went there, most Vietnamese people got up in the morning, went to their rice paddies, went fishing, and then came home. And while we were there, they did that. And after I left, they did that. So did it make any difference? I don't know if it really ever made a difference, us being there. It made a difference for me being there and for other Vietnam veterans. But as a whole, I'm not quite sure whether it was whether we should have been there or did it make a difference that we were.
Mm-hmm. How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, it's kind of made me who I am. I think I'm a pretty good leader, and I think the service had a lot to do with that. Of course, you grow up when you're in the service, but I had a lot of good training and good mentors in the service, and they taught me how to be a leader. And I think that has influenced me in my personal life as far as my job and my career. It's influenced me, obviously, as the commander of the post here in American Legion post here in Stoughton. So I think that's the most important thing, is that it influenced me as how to be a leader.
What is the Stoughton veteran community like?
Very supportive. The entire community, but in general, the Vietnam or the veterans here in Stoughton are very supportive of both the VFW and the American Legion, and a lot of volunteering. This community as a whole is just wonderful when it comes to supporting each other, supporting the veterans, and the veterans supporting each other.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we have not covered in the interview?
I don't think so, other than thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.